Jack wasn't old, but he was a man. He lived in the sand at the Isle of Man.
All right, well then, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast coming at you. I think this right here is episode 240, closing in on what I believe is going to be our 5-year anniversary. Pretty soon, I believe it was in September, near the end of September, where the first episode of Source Material of, I think it was 2014. So keep an eye out there. We might have some throwback episodes just pop up. Hell, you never know. But tonight we're focusing on X-Men Legacy Volume 2. Now, we covered Volume 1 here, and you could go back in the archives. It had to have been last year. To tell us why we're doing this book tonight, he is the man, the myth, the legend, the patriarch of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, Mark Radulich. Mark, why in the world are we talking X-Men Legacy again?
Legion Season 3 has debuted and ended. We're gonna review it this week. Jesse Starcher. Legion Season 3 is why we're talking about X-Men Legacy. Oh, I just made a rhyme, and it wasn't time.
Oh, no. I did not get this memo about singing the whole episode. I know you every once in a while will sing, but not the whole damn episode, not the whole intro.
I got the Steve Miller Band Fly Like an Eagle stuck in my head because of Legion Season 3. Yep. So I will be, for all our Podcoin listeners that have to give this at least 10 minutes before they give up on it, because all they wanted was the double Podcoin, just know I'll be singing to you for the next 10 minutes straight. So put that in your ear hole.
Yeah. You're going to work for your money here. I'll tell you that right now. I've made it to, I think, the third episode so far of Legion, and that soundtrack is pretty dope. So I would agree with you, sir, 100%. Fly Like an Eagle. Their cover of that's actually pretty good. But so, yeah, the main character of X-Men Legacy, it's an X-Men book, but you would think to yourself, well, yeah, they're talking about the X-Men. No, we are talking David Haller. We are talking Legion. He is the main
David Haller, if you hear me.
Got the freaks and the peaks.
That's right. Oh, he's got that math working for him.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, this came out in 2013. Writer is Simon Spurrier, which I think is the same writer as the first 6 issues that we covered. And I believe the art is somewhat the same. As we go through these 6 issues, it kind of changes. But art credits I'm going to give Tan Ing Wat, Craig Young, Paul Davidson, and Jay Leaston is what I have listed here. There might be 1 or 2 creators or contributors that I may have forgot there, but that's your main people that you're going to be seeing on this book. So, David Haller, Legion. I mean, we talked about Legion in that first podcast. This is the son of Xavier, Professor X, if you will. Very powerful mutant. Only problem is he derives his powers from the multiple personalities that reside in his head. They pretty much say that this guy is Omega. Is Omega the word? Omega level mutant?
Yeah,
where
he's an Omega level mutant, yes.
Yeah, so that's big time. He can warp reality. I've seen that happen. He's responsible for the Age of Apocalypse happening, where he went back in time. Mark's playing his porn again. Cut it out, Mark. It's too early for that shit.
I'm not playing porn.
Legion, anything to add before we get into what the book was about? What are your thoughts?
I feel like the first 6 issues of X-Men Legacy, featuring David Haller's Legion, I feel like that was one of those ones where I was kind of looking at you like, I don't know if I get all of what's happening here. I like this one was less esoteric from what I recall. This was a pretty straightforward story where basically David, I don't quite remember what happened with him in Blindfold in the first 6 issues, but where this is picking up, they have somewhat of a relationship. There's a prophecy that says he's going to do a thing and she's going to try to stop him, but they also like each other. And, and there's this element of you don't want to mess too much with the future because you could cause untold damage and all of that. So there's a lot of things going on as we pick up the 7th issue of X-Men Legacy. The story in and of itself, I thought, was more straightforward, though.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely benefit if you read the first 6 issues. If you pick this straight up off the shelf and it's volume 2, I think you're going to feel like you may be missing something, but it's not going to be so detrimental that you are like, okay, I can't read this. So are you ready, Mark? You ready to jump in, or you got anything else to say?
No, man. Let's get that synopsis going. Remind me what I read, Jesse.
Okay, all right. So we're going to do this. The way we're doing this, we're doing the first 3 issues, which is going to be issue 7, 8, and 9, and then we'll break and talk about what kind of happened there, and then we'll do 10, 11, and 12, which is the actual invasive exotic story proper, parts 1, 2, and 3. All right, now bear with me, Mark, because I kind of fleshed this out a little bit. But so issue 7, which was titled Holy Ghost, David finds the Church of the Happy Host, an anti-mutant religious organization who was responsible for corrupting his girlfriend's, Ruth, who goes by the code name Blindfold, that's her name, his girlfriend's brother, Luca Aldine, who died in the previous issue. So if you remember right, Mark, there was a pair of eyeballs that was,
yes,
I think,
yeah.
okay, I think that was Luca, if I remember right, and he caused a lot of trouble, and then he ended up having to die, but a lot of it was because he was warped. His mind was warped by this religious cult, I guess you'd say. So David plans on ending their influence on the outside world and also get some revenge as well. But when Blindfold finds out, she asks David not to hurt them. David abides by tricking the organization Sword, which was on him like within the first 2 pages. They'd sent a little probe robot down that kept saying, "Space Justice! Space Justice is coming!" So apparently, I can't remember.
Show coming to you from the Sci-Fi Network.
Space Justice. We'll have to write the theme song for that. But yeah, I think in the first 6 issues, he did something that kind of pissed Sword off. And so anyway, they're coming down to dispense space justice or arrest David. What ends up happening is he tricks them into believing that the Happy Host followers are filled with this space guilt that David had. So they arrest them instead. Okay, listen, if you're just tuning in and you have no idea about, number one, Legion, the TV series, or Legion, the character in the comic books, there is some really... What would be a word? I want to say like kind of warped.
This book is very much off the beaten path. It's not quite Baby Darkseid.
No. It's more along the lines of, oh, that's pretty funny. I can't believe he did it that way. It just takes you by surprise. So yeah, he tricks Sword into believing the Happy Host followers are filled with space guilt. But mostly the main crux of issue 7 appears to be David's focus on not being reactionary. Now, you got to remember, David is the son of Professor X. Professor X, of course, we all know, Xavier, the man with the dream for mutant kind and humankind to come together, hence the X-Men. But David kind of resents his dad for that, and he wants to kind of be more proactive and take the fight to humanity or the people that would do mutant kind harm. So I think a lot of that is what we see here in this first issue is his intent to kind of go out there and bring the war to the forefront instead of being reactionary. So, all right, issue 8. This is an important issue. Ballad of the Glory Hog. Okay, so Blindfold and David are on an astral date. Okay, so they're kind of furthering their relationship. We get to first base, second base, astral date. They're
Where are you taking me? Where are you taking me? The moon.
Taking it to the astral plane, baby. So they're on the astral date, checking out the memories of Santi Sardina, a mutant with the power to take credit for things he did not do, which is pretty hilarious. This kid, okay, think of this kid who can show up at a moment's whim when, the president of the United States has just won a great war, but just because he's within vicinity of what's happening, everybody gives Santi Sardina credit for what happened, and he would not have anything to do with it. So that's kind of what his mutant power is. He takes credit where credit is not due. So the duo, Blindfold and David, try to determine what might be a good path for the kid. You gotta see this kid's kind of troubled. He starts to realize that he's not, he's kind of a fake. So the kid's kind of troubled by that. And there's this one real crux moment where this kid can make a choice and go on to do something. David believes that Santi should go into politics to really change the world. Now, remember, they're in the astral plane, so it's not like they're sitting there talking to Santi. They're kind of, hanging out as ghostly forms, and David's powerful enough that he could influence this kid's thoughts if he wanted to. So David believes Santi should go into politics to really change the world, while Blindfold believes Santi should go into something that he loves, like art. They argue about this for a little bit, and I think what ends up happening is that I think David kind of pushes him towards the art thing anyway, just because he he's kind of in love with Blindfold. But while on the astral plane, near the end of the issue, David gets attacked by this crazy psychic beast. Saving him, however, seems to be a gold-skinned Xavier, David's dad, that actually takes over David's mind and defeats the beast, then disappearing into the shadows. Now, this form, or whatever this gold-skinned Xavier is, I don't know if I can't remember if that beast attacked him on the astral plane, or if they attacked him in David's head. Either way, this is almost like a really mean-spirited Xavier. And
kind of like Onslaught.
Yeah, not as bad, just more of a bag of dicks. But yeah, David even at some point throughout the book, he just continues to say he doesn't believe it's Xavier. He keeps saying it can't be him, it's not him. But it definitely seems to have the unlimited power that Professor X has. But that's kind of where we leave that. Then issue 9, I think, is called The Judgment of Diana. Anyway, David and Blindfold are having another date on the moon. David tells the story of Arcus, who resides on the moon and believes mutants are a threat. Arcus heads to Earth to kill them. The X-Men come to the moon and face Arcus, and the X-Men are killed. And as he's telling the story, he reveals to Blindfold that this is actually a vision of the future. David had seen the future, and right now he's telling Ruth, Blindfold, about this, as he wants to act before anything happens. She tries to convince him not to do anything to Arcus, because maybe there's hope that he could change. Maybe it won't happen at all. But what we find out is David tells her it's too late. He's already taken action, and he actually did it before bringing her up there, and that's kind of where they end the date. He tells her, take him back to the X Mansion, have them put him under and keep tabs on him, because he's definitely a killer. And she's more upset about the fact that he already took action before even asking her about it. And obviously they end the date. Things aren't so swell between the both of them. Also, you mentioned there is a book of prophecies, the book of Luca Aldine, and at the end of this issue, again, David is looking through this issue to see what's going to be happening in the future. So my assumption is that Arcus guy was he says it was a vision, but it's probably something that was in that book. But yeah, that's kind of where we end that. You see where David makes the decision to take somebody out before it actually happens. Again, supporting that I want to be a proactive role instead of a reactive role. But that's issue 7, 8, 9. So Mark Radulich, what were your favorite parts here? We had a good time reading these first 3 issues. What are your thoughts?
I actually kind of like David's. I don't know if I would go there personally, but I think he looks at Xavier's sort of naivete and idealism and says, this has caused nothing but problems. There's been so much death and destruction amongst the X-Men, and it's not getting any better. And so waiting around to be attacked, and to be persecuted, it hasn't worked yet. It's probably never gonna work. And so David's like, I'm going to use my abilities to create a world that the X-Men can actually live in, but I'm gonna take the ball and go forward with it. Mm-hmm. And I really like this about the dynamic between Blindfold and Legion. Is you have 2 characters who personally like each other very much. They have an attraction to each other, but are coming from 2 philosophically different places. And that's a very real thing in a relationship, where there might be a physical attraction, there might be some sort of cosmic ethereal connection between people, but then one of them says, abortion is the worst possible thing on the face of this earth, and anyone that does so is a murderer. And the other one says, women have a right to choose, and who are you to tell a woman what to do with her body? And suddenly, none of that stuff changes, but you realize you can't be in the same room with that person.
Yeah, it's such a fundamental belief in something that it wrecks the relationship.
I can't tell you how many times I've been cornered. I think I started to allude to this in another podcast where I just gave up on talking politics with people. I was talking about this with Jeremy Lambert on the Taylor Swift review that we did on the Metal Hammer of Doom, where I say, I don't like talking politics with people anymore, because you get such far to the right or left opinions from people, and you can't disagree with them without it becoming a shout down.
Yeah.
So applying that to the Legion Blindfold thing, he truly believes he's doing the right thing. And Blindfold is fully ensconced in the Xavier philosophy of the way to human acceptance is not by overpowering them. You're just going to make things worse that way. And that's a real source of conflict between the two.
Both of them know, right? Don't both of them know that they're destined to like be at each other's throats? Because that was one of the...
They mentioned it a few times.
Yeah. One of the prophecies, and I think you already did say that, Legion is going to be, David, he's going to be at odds with Blindfold at some point in the future, and she's going to be the one that actually kills him. I know we're going to kind of talk about that here in Invasive Exotics as well, I believe.
That's what this series deals with, is fatalism.
Yeah.
Is the idea of, is your future written, and no matter what choices you think you're making, there's really no way out of it. What's going to happen is going to happen, or your future is what you make of it. It's the old final line from Terminator 2, I believe it is, Judgment Day, where they're driving down the highway, like the future is uncertain. The future is what you make of it.
There is no fate but what we make.
Right. And that's one side of the argument. Then the other side of the argument is, nope, your future, your fate is written. You're destined for this, that, or the other thing. And there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. And if that's the case, it's just like, well, if someone were to say to me, like, no matter what you do, this is where your life is going to end up. I might make other decisions. I might be more reckless. I might be less reckless. I might go over and punch my wife in the face. She might come over and punch me in the face. You never know.
And if you knew that was something that was going to happen, I mean, you are watching everything that could potentially lead to it. You would think. But the thing is that these two people, this boy and this girl, are in love. I mean, they're trying to make it work, even though they know what's going to happen.
You can't help who you fall in love with, and even if you're destined to be enemies, it's love doesn't know an enemy. Love only knows what it loves.
Yeah. What'd you think of old Santi Sardina here? Our first taste, because we get a second taste later.
I didn't get that was his power. Like when you were reading the synopsis, I'm like, oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, one of the greatest things when he first finds out he's got. Well, I think it's when he first finds out about it. I know one of the biggest moments where he finds out he has that power is when that superhero stops like some kind of a hostage situation, and he just happens to be standing by. What was his name? Captain Ultra or something, and he does the Ultra Butt.
Yes.
He takes out the that guy, and he just happens to be standing around. The cops like go over to the kid Santi, and it's like, "Good job, Santi," and all he was doing was just standing there. Right. So yeah. The other thing that I liked about that issue, and I doubt you noticed it. Well, you may have, and you're just like, "What the hell?" But at the beginning of the issue, where they put like the artist name and the author and all that, all of them were crossed out. Every single creator was crossed out, and above it was written Santi Sardina, Santi Sardina, Santi Sardina.
I didn't even know. I read it this morning and I didn't catch that detail. That's fucking funny.
Oh yeah, dude. That was. I didn't understand what they were doing. I was like, oh okay. So you want us to get the fact that this is a new character, all right? And then I realized after I was done reading the issue, the kid got all the credit for the comic book. Nice. All right.
I like the Church of the Happy Shriner or whatever it's called.
Host.
The Happy Host. I mean, yeah, this is yet another cynical look at religion. Yet another, hey, look, we threw a dart and hit a comic book writer that's skeptical about religion. Who'd have thunk it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Somebody call Ronnie Adams. But, if we can get past the sort of eye-rolling liberal agenda of the creative team, it's, look, the religious folks are all dumb and all of that. It's like, it was still funny to me. Like, I can kind of divorce myself from the eye-rolling parts and just enjoy what I was reading without getting into the politics of it. And it was funny. They were goofballs and they were wearing silly helmets. And then when the Green Lantern Corps, whatever the hell they are, showed up, and they were like spitting on the one woman and like she's arresting them all.
She's she's Abigail. I can't remember her last name, but she's actually been known to be in a relationship with Beast. I think we've talked about her on here before. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she's been involved with Beast, and of course, as soon as they find that out, every single one of them spit on her. To which 2 panels later, she's still got spit dripping from her uniform. You're like, ugh, gosh, disgusting. Mm. But anyway, there were some eye-rolling parts there. Of course, David's plan was to kind of I think he was actually initially just going to plan on changing their minds. Like he would go in there and just change their minds, but he acted. He was kind of like.
Which then just bring up the more, and it goes into the second issue too, where Black Angus or whatever the hell his name, the villain's name was, where it's like, at what point, it's one of the things they do with Phoenix as we're reading through the Onslaught stuff, where like she doesn't read anyone's mind without them giving her permission. Xavier talks about like you don't want to assault people with your powers. That's what's the word I'm looking for? Immoral.
Immoral. Yeah, I was going to say not morally right, but immoral. Yes.
Right. And David Haller's like, greater good.
He's got the power to do this. Why not? Why not use it?
Right. And he's like, again, it's not malevolency. He isn't robbing banks with his powers. He's recognizing that if you think about when this takes place, I mean, this is what, only a few years ago the series came out, right?
2013 is when this came out. You're talking about, right?
So if you look at the collective experience just from say 1980 to 2013, and look at all the things that have happened to the X-Men. They've killed Jean Grey at least 5 times.
Yes, they have. Yep.
The X-Men, mutants, for God's sakes, I think at this point the Scarlet Witch has done the no more mutants thing.
Uh-huh. Yep.
They all went away for a while. I mean, if you think about it this way, if you take the collective experience of what has happened to mutants just from the 1980s in the Marvel comic book universe, and then you have a guy who has a questionable moral compass and the power to control people's minds, it's no wonder he uses it, and he has a moral justification for doing so. So I thought that as this way, like I can't pick at the writers who are picking on religion because it's like whatever that's what they brought to the table. I'm not going to get myself caught up in it. They're obviously fairly bright guys because they're playing in that sandbox, and that's a lot of grist for the mill to discuss.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into the second 3 issues here. Issues 10, 11, and 12. This is the Invasive Exotics storyline. Invasive Exotic Part 1, 2, and 3. Now, just real quick, they give a good definition of what an invasive exotic is, and I'll be damned if I wrote it down. But imagine a species, okay? An invasive species. It's a species that is not native to a specific location and that has a tendency to spread to a degree believed to cause damage to the environment, human economy, or human health. Okay, that is straight from the wiki. So the idea here is mutants are considered an invasive exotic. They are something that obviously is disrupting the human, the human condition on the Earth. Now that the mutants are here, things are definitely changing. Here we go. I'm going to do my best to synopsis all of these 3 here real quick. David, in issue 10, part 1 of this story, David confronts a golden Xavier in his head in order to steal his power of precognition. Now, if you guys remember in the first 6 issues, if you go back and listen to that podcast, I think David has this big battle inside of his head where all his powers reside. And he ends up connecting this like weird backpack thing to him. So when he wants a power, he has like these needle fingers, he can siphon it from a personality and use it. So that's what's kind of going on in his head. Well,
yeah. So let me just say how physics doesn't work that way, but go on.
We understand, Mark. It's a comic. Golden Xavier, though, this apparently has been stealing some of these powers as well, and he stole something that had the power of precognition. Now, when David asks him for this, Golden Xavier says, "Okay, let's make a trade. I need your body for 1 minute, and if you let me have that, I got to call this favor in at any point in time. If you let me have that, then you can go ahead and see the future." So David relents and says, okay, no problem. So David then sees himself in the future. David becomes this mass, this just horrifying mass of, I don't know, it just looks like a blob almost, that is responsible for ending humanity. I mean, at one point he even says the Avengers show up. They can't even make a dent on this thing. So he sees himself become this mass that ends humanity, and the only options in this timeline, because he's looking at these timelines, are for him to either get killed by Ruth, his girlfriend, Blindfold, or kill Ruth, to which he says, If I do that, it leads to even worse things. When David awakes, he decides to go to the headquarters of Darwin's Martyrs, which I think are the people that were kind of behind, or at least affiliated with the Happy Host Church. At least the first impression I got was they wanted to confront the bigoted organization head on, meeting up with their leader, a guy by the name of Marcus Glove, who, according to David, David's like reading his mind and seeing all this, seeing his memories. Apparently this guy's a pretty nice guy. So these two have this kind of civil conversation about how Marcus Glove wants to end mutant kind. And we have David Haller, who's there, just kind of discussing that with him. So you're kind of taken aback, like, why in the world is he not like poofing this guy out of existence right now? Well, we find out why. When we look into the history of Marcus Glove, we see that Marcus Glove if you look at him first off, he's sitting in a wheelchair. He's got like one arm, maybe he has no arms, but I know that, he's basically a torso with a bunch of metal coming off of him. Half of his face is burnt. The guy has seen some shit. Okay. What we find out is a lot of everything that's happened to him was due to some type of mutant battle. I think he mentions he was burnt by Phoenix fire. At one point, he was a victim. I think the first accident that he ever had was something to do, they referenced Inferno, which was a big mutant thing that happened back in the late 80s, early 90s. Can't remember what it was. But yeah, so, you see that this guy's gone through a bunch of stuff, and it was all at the hands of some type of mutant battle. He was just a bystander, but got hurt. So that's where he believes that, at some point, I think he even says, we ran the math, at some point, the world is going to end, and it's going to be because of mutants. So he has this huge organization. He's got scientists under his belt. He's got all these other things under his belt, and they've developed, I don't know if I even got there yet. Yes, I have. His motto, I want to make sure to get his motto across. Something has to be done. There's your catchphrase for this guy. Something has to be done. So we find out that David actually came there not to confront this guy, but he also knows that they have a pill that he can take that will neutralize him and his powers. So right there at the end of issue 10, you find out that David does not want to even be part of the future that's supposed to happen. He wants to actually end his mutant existence. That's where we end issue 10, and we go into part 2. David's taken on a tour around the facility to kind of prep for taking this pill. Now, we see that there's some mutants that have come there willingly in order to take this pill because they don't want to be a mutant anymore. It's not pretty, though. It's not like it just wipes out the mutant powers. It turns you into like almost a vegetative state. You're able to kind of function, but you don't function like you used to. But on the other side of that, you don't have the powers. So if your powers are that much of a detriment, there you go. While Ruth finds out, of course, Ruth has kind of been following him. Ruth wants to stop David from doing that. After she finds out he wants to take this pill, she's like, no, you can't do that. So she's trying to enlist some people around the X-Mansion to help her out. I know she gets like 3 of them together, one of which is the dude from Gen X that has the plasma mouth. I can't even remember his name, and I guarantee you some of my 90s comic book friends are probably just waiting outside right now. But that I can't remember that character's name. But anyway, she gets about 3 people to finally actually help her out. One of which is Pixie as well. Pixie, this little winged girl. But it turns out that the people, when we get to the end of issue 11, all of the people in this facility that David is at is being controlled by Red Skull. I think that's the end game here. Red Skull's been behind it all. And even though that it's all kind of been a ruse, the pill is still actually real. And by the end of issue 11, David's like, I don't give a shit. Red Skull or not, I still want the pill. So he is dedicated to ending his mutant existence. Issue 12. David again prepares to take the pill. And just as he does, Blindfold and some other students of Xavier rush in and save him. Marcus Glove, I think, is killed in the middle of this. Now, this thing is being televised to all of Marcus Glove's followers, all these people that are followers of, what was it called again? The Darwin's Martyrs. And so they're watching these mutants, like, in their powers. And when this happens, it enrages everybody. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, Marcus Glove has been killed and muties are to blame. But David has a trick up his sleeve, okay? We soon find out David had planned all of this all along. This has been in the plan, in the works. He knew what he was getting into. Just as everybody is getting upset about Marcus Glove being killed by a mutant, he pops in Santi Sardini, brings him in, And sure enough, he gets the credit for killing Marcus Glove. Well, then he also starts taking the credit for the fact that because he shows up and he's like, I'm the leader of Darwin's martyrs. And they're like, oh, good, man, way to go. You're the leader of this religious or this organization that we love, and down with muties. And then he goes, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm a mutant. To which everybody starts freaking out. I mean, there's parts in there where like, didn't you just die? But how are you still alive? Again, it's a mind trip. So yeah, he takes credit for Darwin's martyrs and then exposes himself as a mutant. This confuses all the viewers and everybody there that are believers in these Darwin's martyrs. So they stop watching. And one of the quotes I remember writing down here, this is halfway into the issue. David says, nothing brings people together like being told who to hate, but nothing breaks them apart like having to think about it for themselves. So when they started questioning, like, okay, this leader is a mutant. Oh shit. They just like, okay, well, I'm turning the TV off now, and they go find something else to do. That ain't the end of the issue, okay? Because they still have to deal with the Red Skull, who I guess the Red Skull has some kind of psychic powers or something, but he's kind of a match for David here. And of course, the only person that can help old David out of a jam is golden-skinned Xavier, who says, now it's my time. I need that minute. Golden-skinned Xavier takes over David's mind, and they both beat him. But as Red Skull lays on the ground, Gold Xavier wants one more thing. He wants to get into the body of the Red Skull. They fight. David and Red Skull fight, and Blindfold steps in and helps him out. And with the help of Blindfold, they are able to beat back gold-skinned Xavier. And at that time, the Red Skull wakes up and he escapes. So that's kind of where we end the issue. Later on, David ends up meeting Blindfold, where he confesses he's in love with her and he feels connected to her. And kind of like it looked like they were going to kind of break up, but because of what their future was going to be. But he's like, no, he's like, I want to be with you. They kind of part ways, and then the final part, which he's talking to some dude in a cage. I'm trying to figure, is it Golden Xavier in the cage? I don't know who's in the cage, but in his mind, he's talking to this goblin-looking thing, and it asks him what's next. He says, I think it's past time. I cracked the fucking world open. So is David on more of a mission to go confront some of the evils of the world? I think that's kind of where we left off.
So I like the approach that they took with the mutants, kind of like what they did with the Hulk, where the Illuminati kind of does the math after the Hulk goes crazy in Vegas, and there's like another incident where I think that might have been Vegas, where he like lost his mind there for a while, and tore up Vegas. Then there was another incident. There was like a series of events that led to the whole Planet Hulk storyline. But the rationale for it was, you are eventually going to destroy this planet. And they've even alluded to that in the Hulk comic, future imperfect, that sort of thing. The Hulk is always seen as teetering on the brink of being, the most destructive force on the planet. Mm-hmm. And I think about the Vision's speech in Civil War, Captain America Civil War, the movie, where he's like, since the formation of the Avengers, there's been an extinction level event like every few years. And, it's like, well, are we causing it? Are you suggesting that we're causing it? It's like, not necessarily. But, for every defense, there'll be something rising to challenge it. That's just nature. Mm-hmm. And so there was the argument. That was the argument in favor of signing the Sokovia Accords for supervision, basically, for not just having a loose gun in the world, but for a holster and a series of rules, of engagement per se. So I was thinking about those things in terms of where they were coming from, because normally you when you deal with the enemies of the X-Men, there's a race element. The X-Men have always been sort of a stand-in for gays. They've been a stand-in for minorities. Other minorities besides sexually oriented minorities, whether it be blacks or Jews or whatever. And so like that's always been like the counter rationale for why the mutants should be successful. Is we don't want to be a hateful nation. We don't want to be we don't want to hurt minorities. That's the thing. Yeah. There's an argument here that actually makes sense, and it isn't based in racism. It's based in those things that I talked about before. The Vision speech and the math with the Hulk, where it's like there comes a point where you realize that you're dealing with such a gale force, you have to do something, and they say it a couple times in the comic book, because if not, even even the most benevolent force will become super destructive, and there isn't going to be a countermanding force to stop it. There's no mutually assured destruction with mutants. There's just destruction.
Yeah.
And so you have this group of people that says, okay, and I want to say this is maybe it's God Loves, Man Kills, or whatever X-Men story informed most of the plot of X-Men 3. Can you do me a favor while I'm babbling? Can you look up, can you wiki the movie X-Men 3 and tell me which, other than the Phoenix Saga, what was the other story that informed that plot? Because in that one, they develop a cure for mutants. And inherent in that movie, and one of the high points of it, is this debate amongst the X-Men over whether or not it's worth it to continue to be a mutant. How much of being a mutant is your personality? And so you have someone like Rogue in that movie who can't touch people. She's a girl in the world, and she's got needs, urges, if you will. She can't really live the full human experience because of the nature of her powers. If she touches somebody, she could kill them. She could put them in a coma because she absorbs their life force, and if they have powers, their powers. So she's like seriously thinking about taking the cure because her life is miserable. There's no way to live, and that is consistent with the Rogue in the comic books. We just talked about that with Onslaught, in the Road to Onslaught, where Rogue basically left the X-Men after she kissed Gambit because she thought the world was ending, and the poor guy went into a fucking coma. And it's like, it's not worth it to be this way. Yeah. Did you find the answer for me yet?
I did, as a matter of fact. Kinberg wanted the Dark Phoenix saga to be the emotional plot of the film, while Gifted would serve as the political focus. So there was a story apparently called Gifted, and when you click on that, it takes you to Astonishing X-Men. Is that what you were looking for? Is that what you were thinking it was?
That's what it was, yes.
Okay.
God Loves, Man Kills is X2 United.
Okay.
By the way. They built the plot from X-Men 2 is liberally lifted from God Loves, Man Kills.
I still haven't read that, by the way.
I was like, we need to read that one day and have my dad on.
Oh, yeah?
That's his favorite graphic novel, I think.
Nice.
Because he loves that title.
Yeah, that's...
If he were into tattoos and being like a hipster 20-year-old, he would get God Loves, Man Kills tattooed across his belly like Phil Anselmo. So what I'm getting to is all of those elements are present in this book as David goes to this agency and he's trying to feel them out and see what the deal is. And he's like, no, this isn't a personal thing. This is science. Mm-hmm. This is simply math. We've done the math, and there's no way. There's no other way to look than head on at the numbers, and the numbers say we're going to be extinct if we allow mutants to continue. And so we're offering an opportunity. Now, what undercuts it to some degree is the fact that the cure basically lobotomizes you. I think if the cure were perfect, there might have been some stronger storytelling here. The other side of that is if you're going to offer a pill that lobotomizes people, then it might have been a stronger story had they hid that fact. And David really, David's basically setting them up.
Yeah, it's all a big setup. Those first two issues, you're like, oh, this guy wants to change things. He wants to definitely not be the Legion that we all know him to be.
I had a question about that. If the story had been he was serious about curing himself, one of the problems with Legion is his schizophrenia. Does he still if his mutant ability goes away, does the mental illness go away too, or is he just now a schizophrenic with no powers?
That's a good question. I mean, that's a very good question because he gets these powers from the personalities. I mean, to think about it, I would say that the schizophrenia probably stays. It's got to. He's not able to manifest whatever powers there are. I mean, well, that would suck too.
What a raw deal, man.
Yeah, that would suck. But they really drive it home, though, in those two issues of that story that, it doesn't matter what is going to happen. Red Skull, no Red Skull, personalities, no personalities. He's done. He does not want to end up destroying the world. That's commendable. But then when you find out
that's how winning's done.
But then when you find out he's tricked us all, and he's actually there to make sure that he puts an end to everything. When I say he's there to put an end to Darwin's martyrs and all the people that believe it, which is great. It was a great plot. But one of the things that is very important is the fact that he says something along the lines of, "My destiny is my destiny. I'm the one that's in the driver's seat. It isn't going to be somebody else that's going to, or I'm not going to take myself out of my own life. I'm going to be me, and I'm going to do this." So, it just shows it's supporting that drive that Legion has, that David has. He wants to be proactive. He wants to be the guy that is able to resolve things because he has the power to do so. He's so fucking powerful. There is no reason he should not be able to stop whatever destiny's coming. At least that's what he believes.
I'm actually curious. I mean, I might finish reading this series. We're done with Legion now. They're not doing another season of Legion, so I don't see why we would continue to review this particular book unless we wanted to. But we have so little room on the schedule. We got to
find a fucking spot on the schedule. This one was actually, we had to shoehorn this one in there.
I might continue, I might actually just finish off this series because I want to see where this goes. Because Legion comes across like a villain. These are the same, I mean, Magneto, these are the same kind of thoughts and plans and postulations of many of the X-Men villains, but he's the hero, so he modulates himself to a degree. This amount of manipulation and power and justification for the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I want to see what they do with it next. I want to see, how far down the rabbit hole this goes, and if he ends up, flipping out or not.
Well, I remember we cut to the because this whole prophecy thing, I was curious as to if they addressed it later on the issues. And if I remember correctly, they do. I mean, it definitely is something that comes to a head between him and Blindfold. I want to read this real quick because I found the panel I was thinking of. Blindfold says, but Luca's predictions are future. That's why you came. And he goes in this next panel. He says, she means this, the vile vision, the destiny that must swallow one or the other of us, a terror I've played on to give truth to a lie. We confession to make. I never came here for the cure. If I'm to avoid fucking up, I put fucking in there just because it's a bunch of symbols. If I'm to avoid a fucked up future, it'll be by using the things that make me who I am, not by bloody denying them. I rule me. So there you go. That was I think that was the panel, and that was the self-affirmation that Legion believes he can change things. He is in control. Dollars to donuts. He's going to have some big crisis of faith when he finds out that the fucking future that he's destined for actually happens, and he has to sit there and figure out a way to avoid it. That's how it's always going to end when you have one of these types of stories. But if you go forward with it, Mark, you need to, we need to set just like maybe 10 minutes aside on a source material, and you just say, okay, well, here's how the rest of the issues go. All right, well, Mark Radulich, this has been our discussion on X-Men Legacy, Volume 2, Invasive Exotics, Issues 7 through 12. Mark Radulich, what do we got coming up on the schedule here for the Radulich in Broadcasting Network?
All right, well, Monday, you got to hear X-Men Onslaught Volume 1. Yesterday was a TV party for Hannibal Season 3, our last one. We're finally done with that series. And then in the evening time, we reviewed New Japan Royal Quest, NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff, and AEW All Out. Tomorrow, we continue our look at the Legion character, this time a TV party for Legion Season 3, the final season. We're done. D-U-N, done. September 7th, we've got alternative coverage, commentary for UFC 242, Khabib Nurmagomedov, which is Dustin Poirier for the lightweight title. Next week, we've got Onslaught Volume 2, It Chapter 2, Killswitch Engage Atonement, and She-Ra Season 3. And Saturday, we've got a watch-along live alternative commentary for Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 2. Unfortunately, John Moxley, a.k.a. Dean Ambrose, had to drop out of that because he got the MRSA.
Not
yeah. No Dean Ambrose, no John Moxley, but we're going to, me and Pat are going to sit and watch it anyway. We'll have a good time.
He's done talking, ladies and gentlemen. Go give the Radulich in Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. Hey, Superblog Team Up happened last week, right, Mark?
Yep.
Last week. So, again, if you go to Twitter, type in hashtag SBTU or hashtag Superblog Team Up, you can find many of the articles /blogs /podcasts that were published in conjunction with that great event. The topic was immortal. I am immortal.
I am immortal.
That's right. We all pitched in and had a great time. We did Vampirella. We did...
Whoa, Vampirella.
And we talked about Jupiter Ascending, the skater boy himself, making his presence known there. David Wright joined us on that. And so there were other great contributions to that from the Unspoken Decade. Waltz, boy, I might as well fucking edit that out because I can't remember that dude's name. Chris Sheehan, I know the Cosmic Treadmill had a great edition. I listened to that one today. All right, that's Mark. I'm Jesse. Thanks for joining us on this 240th episode of Source Material. We will catch you soon. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. I really do hope you love the Rattlegion Broadcasting Network. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast? I know it sounds insane, but it's true. We just discovered this free new app called Podcoin, and it literally pays you to listen to podcasts. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts, and you earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you turn that Podcoin in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks, or if you're a good person, you could even donate that Podcoin to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. Here's what you do. Download the app right now on iPhone or Android, and I have a special code for you. Simply use our code MARKWED5. That's capital M A R K W E D 5. Capital M A R K W E D 5. MARKWED5. And you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. And if you listen to enough of us on there, you can get a cappuccino at Starbucks or an Amazon gift card on us. So go ahead and go listen to this podcast or virtually any podcast on Podcoin and sign up with code MARKWED5. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts.
Thank you all for joining us. Make sure to give that Rattlich in Broadcasting Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts we have to offer. We are at home on Spreaker, but you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and recently we have hit the air on Spotify. Find your favorite podcast platform and type in RADULICH to subscribe for some great content. If you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word, and as always, we appreciate any feedback and look forward to entertaining you again soon.
Mother, will they put...
Ah, wonderful.
This was a breezy read, by the way.
Breezy read.
God damn it.
Yeah, Jim, son of a bitch.
God damn it.
Motherfucker.
Fly like an eagle. Let my spirit carry me. I want to fly like an eagle.
How many episodes you got in?
One motherfucker. People ask stupid questions. Open up the door and let my ass out of here. I wanna go to my car.
I might stutter and stumble. That's what the power of editing is all about.
Editing.
So anyway, yeah. So the superhero.
Hey, wise guy. Wah wah wah.
Wah 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 wah. David, yeah, he's in you.
He says, darling, I fancy you.
Oh, here we go again. Fucking Taylor Swift.
All in all, I'm just another brick in the wall.
She's
a little surfer girl.
Wipe well, Mark Rattlich. Wipe well.
They won't leave my ass alone, Jesse. I don't know if you I don't understand.
If anybody fancies anything, fucking Moffat fancies your ass.
Moffat does fancy my ass. I've seriously considered going into Moffat with no pants on from now on. I'm done talking.
You son of a bitch.